moderator of this session, Ervad Temtin Mirza. Following a rigorous religious training at the M.F. Kama Antaram Institute under Dasturji, Dr. Feroz Kotwal, Temtin Mirza was an ordained Navar Martab Shamal at Iran Shah Atish Behram in Udvada. His professional career took him from Mumbai to Iran to Indonesia, and he finally settled in London, Ontario, Canada. He's a CPA by profession, and he's a recreational pilot and a marathoner. As a Mobid, Temtin volunteers religious and spiritual services to Zoroastrians in southwestern Ontario and Michigan. Temtin has published articles on Zoroastrianism in North America and publications and spoken on many topics of Zoroastrianism around the world. Temtin currently serves as the new president of the North American Mobid Council and heads the NAMC Institute of Zoroastrian Studies. Please welcome Temtin Mirza.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this World Zoroastrian Congress 2022. As you know, the theme of this World Zoroastrian Congress 2022 is bridging the global Zarathushti existence. In the spirit of this message of unity, let us attempt to bridge the global human existence regardless of people's faith or lack thereof. That's what we are planning to do today. With this in mind, we are honored that these prominent representatives of some of our fellow religions have joined us to open this Congress with the spirit of universal harmony. So, ladies and gentlemen, faith remains relevant. It remains relevant particularly in our ever-changing contemporary world. All world faiths, all world's great religions are grounded in common truths. It is through spiritual renaissance, spiritual awakening, that humankind will be able to overcome global challenges such as climate change, pollution, war, and aggression. So by emphasizing the commonalities among the various faith traditions, we can promote harmony across the followers of faith traditions and work in harmony with each other for the betterment of humanity. So it is our privilege that the representatives of the great five faiths will share their perspective on the opening day of this Congress. So let me introduce you first to our Dasturji. He needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. So Dasturji Khurshid Dastur has been the Dasturji of Pak Iran Shah Atish Behram of Udvada since 2002. Dasturji was educated at the Dadar Athornan Institute, a prestigious institute for training Mobids. He attained his Navar and Martab and Samel at the Iran Shah Atish Behram. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, going through this in Udvada is not easy, particularly when you have to go become a Samel. You are examined by very senior Mobids, and they are very, very tough on you. And Dasturji passed that with flying colors. So Dasturji is invited to speak about Zoroastrian religion and history at community events worldwide. He addressed the 5th World Zoroastrian Congress in 2005 in London, and the 9th World Zoroastrian Congress in 2009 in Dubai. He visited North America in 2010 to address Zoroastrians in New York, Boston, and in Canada, in Toronto. He was a speaker at the Parliament of World Religions in 2021. As an invited guide and supervisor, he officiated the higher religious ceremonies to be performed for the establishment of the first wood-burning Atascadeh in Houston, Texas. In December 2015, Zarathushti spearheaded the Iran Shah Utsav, the first of its kind. It was attended by approximately 4,000 Parsis and Irani Zarathushtis from all over the globe. The recent restoration and conservation work of the Udvada Atisperam was completed under the initiation and supervision with the financial support of Sapurji Palanji Mistry family. So Zarathushti is a dedicated proponent of world peace. So now I will invite Zarathushti to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Tempton. On the dais, Father Brian McQueenie, Rabbi Potasnik, Bhai Sahib Sarpa Singh Ji, and Swami Sarva Prayananda Ji. Today's topic about faith and how faith matters in our daily life. Oem vedine mas dayasna nagai astavani neki rasanad aidunbat. May I, belonging to the good Mazdayasni religion, have religious knowledge, faith in the religion, and goodness. What is faith? The Hebrews believe that the faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. The wind blows. No one can see it, but you feel it and know that it is there. We practice blind faith every single day of our lives without consciously knowing or thinking about it. Man cannot proceed in this world without faith. All forms of human interaction, all kinds of human endeavor, all forms of human cooperation and fulfillment are based on faith, whether you appreciate it or not. Faith in our fellow men, and of course, faith in ourselves. When we go to sleep, we are quite confident that we will get up the next morning. Therefore, we make plans, not only for the coming day, but for coming months and for coming years. Physically, there is nothing to guarantee that we will get up the next morning, because many don't. Why should we be the exception? This is only because we have faith in an unknown person. It is faith that allows us to procrastinate, simply because we have implicit faith that we are going to be around to do what we have left for another day. These daily occurrences build up faith in us. Have you ever wondered what and where is the origin of our faith we so depend on? It originates a religion, a belief in a set of doctrines, a belief system, a way of life. According to me, faith is believing in something bigger than our individual selves. It is in the realization of God that He is greater, wiser, smarter, more caring, and more involved in our lives than our human capacity can conceive. Yes, faith matters, regardless of its connotations, for religious provides solace to the soul and temples, house of our faith. Our modern world affairs are endless number of choices and possibilities. Science and technology are continually expanding our knowledge and are able to satisfy almost all our physical and mental needs. Yet we are looking out of something that will accomplish a feeling of completion. There are numerous questions that remain unanswered till the end. If every question had a ready answer, would there be a sincerity in prayer? If every pain had an easy cure, would there be thirst for salvation? If every loss was restored, there would be no desire for hope. Religion offers liberation, deliverance, and fulfillment. Therefore, faith matters. Faith matters because religion will always remain a natural part of life. And faith matters because it is only faith in religion that helps us to calm the chaos within us. It heals our unseen wounds, and it is faith that helps us believe in second chances, re-establishing the importance of life. I would like to briefly explore why religion or faith in something and someone up there matters. How significant is belonging to a particular faith to any individual? None of us is born a mere individual in isolation. We come to this world with a network of pre-existing ties, bonds, and obligations. Some inherit a religion at birth, while others like to convert it. But at one point or the other, we make a conscious decision whether to participate in our religious communities or not. In fact, the root word of religion is the Latin word religare, which means to reconnect or to bind. Humans are social animals. Organized religion and religious communities provide for individual purpose while also fulfilling one's need for communal belonging. Our early development stages within our community are the foundation stones that shape our background. It instills our values and forms our identity. It shapes our personality. Our religious background with its symbols, traditions, ancient history, its customs, festival, ceremonies, concepts of birth and death, and the ceremonies that follow, worship of deities, pilgrim centers, and holy places, all this and more give meaning to life and influence our lifestyle. Identifying the people with our own faith provides opportunity, aspiration, learning, and many more personal blessings. But this comes to individuals who look beyond themselves and to others. Religion instills ethics, morals, and social responsibility. Coming together as community brings out altruistic behavior and empathy in most members. These traits very often benefit society and give substance to our faith, enrich our human empathies, and bolsters our civic foundation. Faith matters because the world today is often the flash of images that burn bright and then fade away. So rich on the surface, so neglected at the roots. But religion keeps you grounded, inspires you to dig beneath the surface, and connects you to moral foundations that reinforce the best of our shared humanity. The marvels of religious power and the faith are unmatched, that very often even the agnostic cannot begin to see a glimpse of what religion beholds, especially in the face of the unknown. I hope that through my concluding remarks, I can establish a brighter worldview. The world is birthplace of many faiths and has accommodated and nourished multiple religions. There is no denying that religion do not exist in vacuum. They exist in all societies, side by side with social and economic process, cultures, politics, customs, and traditions. And the most important thing is that they exist among people, among those who live their religions. People with different faiths cherish and live with values and beliefs that shape their lives according to religious scriptures, practices, and traditions. And that is why existence with people who hold a different faith must be respected and accepted, as you would want them to accept and respect you. Living in harmony with people with different faith is about finding and celebrating our similarities, and also about understanding our differences, our contrasting views. It is about being genuine, about speaking out, and it does not involve becoming like other or imposing your ideas on them. It is about having the ability to accept the differences, to accept that they hold a different set of beliefs and opinions, and to be at peace with that too. Understanding and respect for other religious systems and institutions increases our appreciation of their values and their customs. Despite the differences in worship and theology, all religions share a common teaching, which is peaceful coexistence, tolerance, charity, and selfless service to humanity, irrespective of race, color, caste, creed, sex, or religion. This is the virtue that is really based on act of faith or trust. The faith that no matter how different we may be, no matter how diverse our social conditioning, there is the possibility of understanding one another, perhaps helping one another, and learning from one another. As human beings, we are incredibly different in our backgrounds and beliefs, but as human beings, we always can find something in common on the basis of we can understand one another. I believe that people of faith can quickly find common ground when they choose to focus on the positive, life-giving aspects of religions. They can even find common ground with people of different faiths who seek the good of humanity. Once the common ground is discovered, then there is no telling what can be accomplished. There is no such more we can do together than we can do alone to truly make the world a better place for us all. If your faith in your belief system or your designated faith, your experiences will become your reality, confirming that faith matters. It is faith that empowers it to see the invisible, embrace the impossible, and hope for the incredible. Keep the faith going. Atazamiyat yatha frinami. Thank you.
That was a compelling argument about why faith matters, and particularly respecting faiths, other faiths, is so important. Thank you, Dastaji. Our next speaker is Father Brian McQueenie. Father Brian McQueenie is a native New Yorker. Hey, right from here. And has been a priest for the last 49 years. So when he started, most of you were not even born. He attended St. Joseph Seminary, where he received both his Bachelor of Arts and Master of Divinity degrees. Post-ordination in the Roman Catholic community, he continued his studies at Iona College, where he received a Master of Education in Pastoral Counseling. He received a doctorate in ministry from Princeton Theological Seminary. He has been a professor in the Institute a number of communities. He has served on many boards and lectured on many institutions. Presently, he is the director of the Office of Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs and Community Outreach of the Archdiocese. So now we will hear
Here we go. Good evening. Oh, good afternoon. I am a native New Yorker, very proud of that. One of the things, though, that they say about New York and indeed about the United States is that we're a melting pot. And I do not like to hear that. I remember a bishop that Rabbi and I used to watch when we were much younger, Bishop Sheen, who used to refer to our country as a mosaic. All different colors, all different shapes. And yet when you draw back and see the totality, you see unity. Unity in diversity. And I'm very happy to have accepted this invitation to be a part of this wonderful time together. I looked at the title and it said, Faith Matters. And that to me was a crucial title. Faith matters. It didn't say, my faith matters. It didn't say the faith matters as if one is more powerful or more significant than another. And it didn't say a faith. It said faith, that which guides our thinking, that which guides our feelings, that which draws us into relationship. That's what faith is. And one of the parts of the invitation said, is faith relevant today? And I had to smile. Because if we ever needed faith, it is in these present moments. All too often, we see our society dividing and subdividing and subdividing. Civility has gone out of our public places. When I was a youngster, I was always a political guy. And I thought I might get into politics one day and maybe be a governor or something. But because I belong to the church, I'm not involved in politics at all. But I remember going to the UN. I might be 12 or 13, no security guards, by the way. You just walked into the UN and go to the front desk. And in the front desk, there would be tickets for different meetings that were going on. You could just walk in. And I remember going and attending a trusteeship council meeting. And the Russians and the Americans were having a difference of opinion. What a shock, surprise. And the Russian would say, well, I believe my colleague from the United States has misinterpreted my purpose. And I wanted to do X, Y, or Z. And then the American would say, my honorable friend from USSR has presented an interesting concept, but I don't know whether or not that's what I would really think he's saying, and he would give his definition. There was honor there. And you know what they would do afterwards? Because I found out what they did afterwards. Because they left the microphones on too long. And the Russian went over to the American and said, "Are you going to the party tonight?" You don't see that today. You don't see that in foreign affairs. You don't see that in domestic politics. That's why we need faith. What does faith conflict with? In our modern society, we see not only this lack of civility, we see also that we have become a throwaway society. We don't repair anything anymore. When I was a child, there was someone called, and those of you who are younger than I am might not realize that there was an occupation called the TV repairman. And you actually got your TVs repaired. Not now. Now you go to Best Buy or Amazon. I had to mention Amazon, the god of merchandise. But we just keep on buying. And we can't have an iPhone 2. We have to have, as both Rabbi and I have, iPhone 13. Well, you got a Pro. I just got a 13. But we're a throwaway society with people as well. And that's a problem. We see little babies now without mothers because their mother was shot right on the street of New York. Why? We don't know yet because we haven't caught the alleged perpetrator, as they say. But the idea is that child, what's going to happen to that child? And what caused that person to do that? We throw away people when we have political disagreements. Families have become divided over who's Democrat, who's Republican, who's independent, who's green, who's Workers' Party. We have all these differences and we don't talk to each other. And we listen to only those networks that agree with us. We divide ourselves again and again and again. And there's also something else that has been eliminated in terms of those of faith, of non-faith, really. They look in the mirror and see their God. Their opinion is the only one that counts. Their rights are the only one that counts. They don't speak of responsibility. And so people of faith have to approach that. And pleasantly, I say to you, my Holy Father, Pope Francis, has gone a great way to talk to us about the issues in which must bind us together as a human family. In Fratelli Tutti and Laudatio Si, he wants us to recognize a great sense of commonality. We cannot rescue part of the culture and climate of the world in one part of the world. Climate must be seen as a universal need. We can't just breathe in the United States, but we have to think of those who are in Africa, facing all kinds of climate change, resulting in tremendous floods and loss of homelands. And that's what nature causes. What about what we cause as human beings, when we think we deserve more land and we conquer the nations ahead of us because that's what we want and not necessarily protecting the others who are around us, who are really us. One of the words that I don't like in the comments that we make all too easy and hear political leaders and sometimes religious leaders talk about tolerance. I don't like tolerance. I prefer respect. I prefer relationship. It's wonderful. Communication has overtaken us in many ways in technology. But one of the things communication has done positively for people of faith is to recognize that we see each other. And for example, in New York, we have, and this sounds terrible, I don't like the title, they got to change this, the Interfaith Security Council. Now, if that is the most, not the most threatening type, and who are these people who are in the Interfaith Security Council? They're rabbis, imams, ministers of all different faiths, Christian faiths, and a Catholic priest. But the fact of the matter is, we get together, we see each other, we embrace each other, we celebrate each other. And that's what faith does. I am not threatened by Rabbi Potasnik. The only thing he gets on my nerves about is his love of the, dare I say it, Boston Red Sox. But otherwise, we have a good relationship. And in fact, and this is serious with Rabbi, when things are going negatively, even in other parts of the world, like in Egypt or in France, he's the first one that calls me up and says, we have to go over there together. And so we, as a group of religious leaders in New York, make sure we go and commiserate with the Egyptians who might have lost some of their Christian citizens or Muslim citizens. No matter what it is, we're going to be there. So I am grateful for being able to be part of a faith that is looking always to protect the human dignity, not of Catholics, but of all people, who are seeking peace for all people. And I pray that all of you, and especially the young people that we've mentioned, that they will grow up in a more faithful world, which will become a more peaceful world.
Thank you so much, Father. It's amazing, your analogy about mosaic, not a melting pot, is so important. We respect each religion, yet we live in harmony with each other. That is vital. And then, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring back that TV repairman. We need him. After all, the things that we throw away is criminal. We should learn to repair things and live within our means as far as the environment is concerned. And the words of wisdom that came out of his mouth are worth preserving. It's the seniors who give us this wisdom. It's the seniors who tell us how to live because they have seen the world before us. So all the youth in this congregation, please pay attention to the words of wisdom that the Father has given us. So now the next speaker, Swamiji. Swami Sarvapriyananda is the minister and spiritual leader of the Vedanta Society of New York. Again, local. This Vedanta Society was founded by none other than Swami Vivekananda in 1894. So Swamiji received his sannyas, the final monastic vows, in 2004. He has served as an acharya, a teacher of the monastic probationaries training center in Belur Mahat in West Bengal in India. He has also served in various capacities in different educational institutions of the Ramakrishna Mission in India and as assistant minister of the Vedanta Society of Southern California. So Swamiji is well known for his talk on Vedanta. He is a TEDx speaker, a SAN speaker, and has spoken on several universities across the world, including at Harvard University. He has played a prominent role in organizing and participating in various interfaith panels and seminars, including the Interfaith Conference held in November of 2018 to commemorate the 125th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda's seminal speech at the Parliament of World Religions in 1893. So with that, I will hand over the floor to Swamiji.
Distinguished faith leaders, and dear friends. You know, when I walked in here this morning, I suddenly had a very surprising, sudden feeling of, unexpected feeling of gladness and joy when I saw all of you gathered here together. I was just thinking, why? And one reason I was just thinking that probably we are ancient friends. You and I, we belong to the two most ancient surviving religions in the world today. Not just friends, close relatives. There's an enormous amount of scholarship to show that Zoroastrianism and the Vedic religion have a common source. You just heard about Swami Vivekananda. I come from the Vedanta Society, which he founded in 1894. And he came to the World Parliament of Religions in 1893, as you just heard, in Chicago. But before that, on the boat, on the ship from India, there was a Parsi businessman and a Hindu monk on the same ship, Jamshedji Tata and Swami Vivekananda. And they had a conversation, a wonderful conversation, where they talked about the importance of science education. Imagine a Parsi businessman and a Hindu monk on a ship in late 19th century to America, talking about the future of science education and fundamental research in India. And the result of that also was, years later, Jamshedji writes to Swami Vivekananda, do you recall that we met on the ship? And I'm very taken up by the idea of establishing an institute for science education. I want to start that. And I want you to be the first director. Of course, that didn't happen, but the institute was set up. And that's the Indian Institute of Science today in Bangalore. If you go there, the local rickshawalas and autowalas, they still call it the Tata Institute. And that it is the Tata Institute, actually. And I was looking at the history. When it was set up, by the way, Swami Vivekananda was gone. He used to say that I won't live to see 40. And he passed when he was 39 years. Jamshedji also had passed. It was set up a few years later. Sister Nivedita was instrumental in getting it set up under a lot of opposition from the then colonial government in India. I was just thinking, if you look at the history of the Indian Institute of Science, some of the products, graduates from that institute went on to set up the IITs in India. And the products of those products of those IITs are fueling the information and technology revolution across the world, especially here. They are behind the iPhones sitting there on the rabbis and father's desk. So all over the world, Indians, especially here in the United States, in Silicon Valley, it all goes back to a conversation between that Parsi businessman and the Hindu monk on the ship to America. And just sitting here, it struck me, you are the ones who gave us the name Hindu. The story that the ancient Zoroastrians, Persians, they pronounced Sindhu as Hindu. And that's how the name Hindu came for the followers of the Vedic religion. Not just that. The Upanishads, Vedanta came to the West through the efforts of a young Frenchman, Anquetil Duperron, who came to India and he discovered and he gathered translations of the Upanishads with the commentaries, translations, by the way, which were commissioned by the Prince Darashikoh, Aurangzeb's elder brother. And he brought them to France and they were translated. The great German philosopher Schopenhauer, he read the translation of these Upanishads, the Latin translation of this Persian translation of the Sanskrit original. And Schopenhauer said that there is no study in the world as beneficial as the study of this Upanishad, that was the name of the book, except perhaps the originals. But my point is, Anquetil Duperron did not go to India to find the Upanishads. He went to India to find the original copies of the Zend-Avesta. So that was the quest. But see how the two are interlinked. Anyway, today I wanted to talk to you about the harmony of religions, the harmony of faiths. India, one thing that India can share with the world, especially in the world of religion, is this idea of many faiths existing together in harmony. There is this book, The Evolution of God, written by Robert Wright, who is a neo-Darwinist, an atheist. He lives in Princeton here. So he's written this book, The Evolution of God, talking about how the religions, of course, God is not evolving, but the religions are evolving, how Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have evolved. And there, in one chapter, he talks about the possibility of peace between the great world religions. And he says, there is a formula discovered by the ancient Hindus. Truth is one. The wise speak of it differently. It's from the Rig Veda, nearly 5,000 years ago. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. Robert Wright goes on to say that it's perhaps because of this attitude towards religion that the ancient Hindus were able to coexist with a variety of religious belief systems. So there's at one point it leads to the emergence of multiple systems of thought, multiple philosophies, multiple religions. Ancient India had not only the Hindus, the ancient Vedic religion, but also it was the beginning of Jainism and Buddhism. And very soon afterwards, the first Jews came to India after the destruction of the second temple, I think, in 70 AD. And then the Christians were there in India almost from the time of the apostle Thomas, the doubting Thomas, I think, yes. So from that time, there were Christian settlements in India. The Muslims were there from the almost the time of the lifetime of the Prophet himself. And then, of course, Sikhism. So all these religions, they coexisted because it's not just among the Hindus, but it's a kind of sentiment shared by Indians in general, I think, that the truth is one, but the wise can express it, can practice it, and conceive of it differently. The idea that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family. There is a statement in the Upanishads which says that I am Nija, I am Para, iti ganana laghu chetasam. This is mine and that's the other, not mine. Such is the thinking of little minds, of petty minds. Udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. For those whose minds are broad and hearts are big, attitudes are liberal, for them the world is one family. I was at another interfaith conference just yesterday on an island, beautiful island off the shore of New Hampshire in Star Island. And there, this thought came to me that, it's not really interfaith conferences, seminars, paper publications, United Nations declarations, which are all very good and necessary, but they're not crucial. What came to my mind was the simple Indian villager who doesn't know much about his own faith, let alone other faiths, but is perfectly fine with the fact that he worships Vishnu and somebody worships Durga and somebody worships Shiva, and there is the Muslim going to the mosque and perhaps a Christian settlement or the Sikhs going to the Gurdwara. It seems fine to him. And that seeming fine to him does not depend on, interfaith conferences and declarations and meetings. I mentioned this to a psychologist who was sitting next to me at the table yesterday there. And he said, it's attitude, not knowledge. Knowledge is important. It's very beneficial and it should be there. But even more fundamental than that is the attitude that it's fine if people are different. What I'm going to say to you now, just 5 points in the time remaining to me, is based on the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, who was Swami Vivekananda's guru. But it's not just Sri Ramakrishna. This is ideas shared by, I think, all Hindus would agree to this. Why all Hindus? I think all Indians would agree to this. And many people around the world would find it most congenial. This is what I'm going to say now. The beauty of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings was that he would teach through parables. So if one goes away from this, not remembering anything that was said, the stories will stick in our minds. The parables will remain with us. The first thing he says is that an ant came upon a hill of sugar and with delight went there and with great effort dragged one grain of sugar back to its hole and looked back and said, I'm coming back for the whole of it. Well, it can't. It's impossible for the little ant to take the whole hill of sugar, and it need not. One grain is enough to fill its little tummy. And we are like that. When confronted by the infinite mystery of God, the ultimate reality, call it Brahman, Allah, Ahura Mazda, whatever you call it, that infinite mystery, the infinite nature of God, even one aspect of it is enough for us. That reality is infinite. Not only is it infinite, it is beyond human conception and language. In Sanskrit, avang manasa gochara. So something that is beyond conception, beyond language. When we try to bring it within the realm of conception and language, with our understanding and language, then we will have different philosophies, different theologies. You have different expressions. So Sri Ramakrishna is known for this very famous metaphor of, in Bengal, in India, in the villages, there are ponds, common sources of water called pukur in Bengali. So he says the Hindu goes to that pond and calls it jal, which is the Bengali word for water. And the Muslim goes to that same place and calls it pani, again, water. And the Englishman, remember, it was the British colonial context at that time. The Englishman goes to the same place and calls it water, but they all are referring to the same reality. Likewise, when you talk about Brahman or Shiva or Ek Onkar or Allah or our Father in heaven, you are using different language and different terminologies and associated conceptions, but you are referring to one ultimate reality. The truth is one, it can be expressed in different language. Not only is it infinite and can be expressed in different language, but attaining that truth is the purpose of human life. What is the goal of human life? He put it very simply. God realization is the goal of human life. And therefore, all these different religions we have, what is their purpose? There's many purposes. There are political purposes, social purposes, ethical purposes. Faith matters in so many different ways, as we just heard. But what is the central purpose? Is there a central transcendent purpose? Yes. That is the purpose of our human life also, God realization and attainment of that ultimate reality. That is the ultimate purpose of life, ultimate purpose of existence, and religion is meant to take us there. It's a bridge between the human and the divine. Now, next, I think the justice will like the way the argument develops. It's like a legal argument, persuasive. The third step in this is that if religion is the bridge, is the path to the ultimate reality and takes us to our goal of our life, there can be different paths. And Sri Ramakrishna would say, the goal is to go to the roof of the house. You can take the stone staircase, you can take the wooden staircase. Remember, that was the days before elevators. So you can go up by the bamboo ladder, or even you can climb up with a rope, but you get to the roof of the house. And all the different religions, they are different pathways to attainment of transcendence, of the goal of life. If there are pathways, now immediately you see there's no need to quarrel. In fact, it's wonderful that you have different ways of to get to Midtown, Manhattan, Hilton here. There are different ways. And there's an app actually called Waze, which tells you how to get here. And there are multiple approaches. Depending on where you are, there'll be different approaches, and some of the approaches will be more suited to you than others. And that's perfectly fine. Remember, when Hinduism or Sri Ramakrishna talk about the harmony of religions, they're not saying that all religions are the same. Not a melting pot, a mosaic, but they are different. And it's wonderful that they are different. In the economy of God, it's wonderful that there is a place for every faith, every approach to God. Now, he balances it with saying something the opposite. This is also important. He talks about, Sri Ramakrishna talks about the man who went to dig for water, starting to dig a well. It's hard work. So he stopped. Somebody told him, try there. And he went and tried there. Hard work, stopped there, tried a third place, a fourth place. At the end of the day, he had dug in half a dozen different places, no water. But if he had persisted in digging in one place, he might have found water there. Similarly, it's important. All religions are valid and true. They take you to transcendence, take you to the goal of life, but one needs to follow something sincerely. There's an importance of tradition. There is an importance of culture, which is why you have to be congratulated above all to maintain this millennia-old culture through thousands of years and centuries, what you have done. It's important to maintain this, to cultivate it and protect it and transmit it. So like the man who was digging for water, one needs to dig in one place. There's a word called Ishta-nishtha in Sanskrit, dedication to your chosen ideal. And that has to be balanced, number 5, with respect for the teachers, the scriptures, and traditions of all religions. So these 5 points, the infinite nature of that reality, which can be expressed in different language, to attain that is the goal of reality, the goal of a human life. And the different religions are pathways to help us to attain that. Dedication to one path is important. And finally, respect for all the paths, for all the teachers and scriptures is absolutely important. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the lesson in history is important. Who would have thought that Jamshedji Tata would be on the same ship as Swami Vivekananda? It's nature. Somehow our Mazda must be looking from up there, making sure that these two guys come on the same ship, talk to each other, and make things happen. And that is the legend today. They made things happen. The institute that we have, the educational systems in India, well, thank you, Swami Vivekananda, for the inspiration. And the impact, the benefit of that meeting is worldwide. Also, Swami talked about Aquatil the Pero. Aquatil the Pero, he went out to find something, he found something different. But he was instrumental in bringing Zoroastrian teachings, Zoroastrian scriptures, Zoroastrian texts, and Hindu texts to the West. Truth is one, and the wise speak and express it differently. Such profound, profound thinking. So we should embrace that perhaps. And all religions are practiced in India. And that little villager doesn't care. You practice what you like, I will what I like, and life goes on, we are happy. That one again, an example of living together in harmony. Thank you so much, Swamiji, for this wonderful, wonderful presentation. Rabbi Petznick is an executive vice president of the New York Board of Rabbis, another New York. And presently, a Rabbi Emeritus, he has been the spiritual leader of the congregation Mount Sinai in Brooklyn Heights, since 1972. So the rabbi has published numerous articles in newspapers, and his book, Just Give Me a Minute, contains many of the commentaries in 1010 WINS radio. He has a radio show. As the host of TV program Faith to Faith on the Jewish broadcasting service that aired around the country, he invited people of all faiths to participate in meaningful conversation. He is a chaplain at the New York City Fire Department and a former member of the New York Human Rights Commission. Rabbi Petznick is committed to ensuring all Jewish people's security and combating violence that has plagued this country. Thank you so much, Rabbi, for being with us, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Firstly, thank all of you for allowing me to present to the Zoroastrian Congress. I wish this Congress much more success than the United States Congress in accomplishing anything. Secondly, I just want to disagree with my colleague, Father McWeeny. We do have a TV repair person. We do have a phone repair person. We call that person a 5-year-old. Thirdly, I'd like to make a recommendation, which I hope you accept unanimously. We often sit at interfaith tables with representatives of the different denominations. I see that there is one representative that is missing at those conversations, and that is a member of the Zoroastrian faith. So I want to invite Zoroastrian representatives to participate in the interfaith dialogue and discourse that we need to have with one another. You belong at the table. As a member of the Jewish faith, I know what it is to be left out. You know what it is to be left out. And we have a responsibility to include those who have been excluded. Tradition, in order to have a public service, you have to have 10 people. Well, that evening, weekday evening, we had 9. So I went out on the street, stood in front of the synagogue. A gentleman walked by. I said, "Excuse me, sir, are you Jewish?" He said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Well, we need one more to have the public service called a minyan. Could you join us?" He looked at me and said, "Sir, I don't believe in organized religion." I looked at him and I said, "Sir, if we were organized, would I be standing on a street stopping people as they walk by?" So it was nice to be together with the organized and the disorganized as one. Many years ago, I was invited to participate in the induction of Cardinal Edwin O'Brien. The ceremony took place at St. Patrick's Cathedral. I had 2 tickets in my pocket that was sent to me. I go to the cathedral. There was an elderly Catholic woman who wanted to enter, but she didn't have a ticket. And I went over to her, I said, "I have an extra ticket, please take it." She said, "Oh my God, who are you?" I said, "I'm a rabbi." She said, "A rabbi? Only in New York. For a Catholic to get into St. Patrick's Cathedral, do you need a rabbi to give you a ticket?" To me, that statement is what we have to be about. We have to open doors for one another. My parents came to this country after the Holocaust. They lost 5 children. They arrived in Lynn, Massachusetts. The first group to reach out to my family were the nuns of St. Mary's Church, a Catholic group. They opened doors for my family. They helped them get employment because they believed that they were entitled to the liberty, justice that you spoke about, that all of us are entitled to have. The liberty to worship, to be, to practice without interference from anyone else. There is a famous question in Jewish tradition. 2 people are in a desert, 1 canteen of water, enough for 1 person to drink. If both drink, both die. Who drinks from the canteen? And in keeping with our tradition, we argue back and forth, but we come to a majority opinion. The majority opinion is if you are fortunate enough to own the canteen, you have the right to drink because your life takes precedence. But one thing you must remember, you have a responsibility to the person left behind, to the person who was unable to drink from that canteen. I think we in the faith community, we have a responsibility, as those nuns understood, to help all people who are denied the freedom to practice their religious faith. Sadly, in this country, in this world, we have seen the rise of hate crimes. And you know very well, the person that hates me today is going to hate you tomorrow. But one of the things I've learned is faith communities stand with one another to protect one another. When there was that horrendous moment in Charlottesville, Virginia, and the group of hate mongers chanted, "Jews will not replace us," Christians, Muslims formed a protective barrier around the synagogue. And they said to the hate mongers, "You want them? You got to go through us." When there was an attack in Christchurch, New Zealand against Muslims, we stood together here in New York around the Islamic Center of NYU, saying the same. You want them? You got to go through us. Because we understand, in the words of a Muslim proverb, God has made one blood of the human family. Jeffrey Myers, who was the rabbi of Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where there was that horrendous slaughter in the sanctuary, he asked the following question. When after the war, we said never again, did we say never again with a question mark or with an exclamation mark? And I think that we in the faith community, we made a promise that never again would have an exclamation mark. But unfortunately, there's a question mark. I recently returned from Poland, our Poland-Ukrainian border. We brought medical supplies. We welcomed refugees. You would be proud. You would be proud because as you stand near the Ukrainian border, what do you see? You see Israelis and Arabs and people of all different backgrounds, people of religious belief, standing with one another, welcoming the refugees and say, you belong to us. Those words on the ticket years ago when you entered an event would say, no good if detached. If you tore the ticket, it was no good. We can't afford to be detached from one another. So we must stand together. We teach our kids that 1 and 1 equals 2, but we also have to teach them that 1 and 1 equals 1, because all of us share a oneness of spirit. There is a wonderful individual in this city named Frank Siller. Frank Siller lost his brother Stephen Siller on 9/11 and formed the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. His brother ran through the Hugh Carey Tunnel to the towers to save lives, and he lost his life. And he told me something very interesting. Frank said, you know, I'm a Catholic, and I had my first communion, like a Jewish bar mitzvah. And we had a poor family, and I was able to get in gifts $28. And that was a lot of money at that time. But then my parents said to me, Frank, you can't keep the $28 in total. You got to give some of that away to people who are even poorer than we are. So he gave $14 away to some poor people who lived in the neighborhood. And then he said something to me that I've always remembered. He said, Rabbi, I remember what I did with the money that I gave, but I don't remember what I did with the money that I kept. So it is a great privilege to be with all of you, because our faiths, no matter what their names, are about giving to others, about making sure that everyone else has a place at the table and there's room for each other to uphold religious liberty. Years ago, there was a magazine called Life. Remember that magazine? After Life, there was a magazine called People. After People, there was a magazine called Us. After Us, there was a magazine called Self. We started, right? Life, People, Us, Self. But we Jews read from right to left. So first, it may be about self, but ultimately, it's about us as one people who must make life meaningful and dignified and decent for one another. Thank you very much.
Isn't that inspiring? How people of different faiths unite when there is a threat against humanity. Yes, yes, okay. And his quote, the person that hates you today will hate me tomorrow. We have to remember that. We have to remember that. And never again is a common principle between the Jews and the Zoroastrians, the two prosecuted communities in the world. So again, the last quote that the rabbi gave us, I remember the money that I gave away. I do not remember what I did with the rest. It's so profound. Thank you, Rabbi. Oops. Okay, and now, Bhai Sahib Satpal Singh Ji is a founding trustee of the Sikh Council of Interfaith Religions, a member of the Executive Council of Religions for Peace in USA, a member of the Religious Leaders Circle of the Multi-Faith Alliance for Syrian Refugees, former chairperson of the World Sikh Council America region, and a member and on the board of directors of the Family Justice Center in Erie County, New York. He engages in interfaith dialogues on diversity, religion, and peace. and has represented the Sikh faith in many forms, including delivering a prayer on peace and harmony along with Pope Francis on the 9/11 memorial in New York City. Dr. Singh speaks and writes on the issue of violence against women and has practiced and participated in and organized national and international panel discussions on this issue. Dr. Singh is a professor at the State University of New York in Buffalo, New York. His research focuses on neurodegenerative disorders, and he directs an annual summer-long research program in the University of Cambridge in UK. Dr. Singh, please.
Thank you very much. And I would like to start with real gratitude to the organizers of this program, because I think not only that this program overall is really very well designed and needed, but particularly this forum on interfaith understanding, I think it's really quite important and very timely. I only have one concern, that most of us who are sitting here come from New York, and I hope there is no lawyer sitting in the gathering to accuse us of nepotism. So coming back to the actual title, I want all of us to remember one number for today. Today marks the 127th day. I don't know how many of you can relate to that directly. Today marks the 127th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Why is this happening? Because Russia thinks that Ukraine, the territory of Ukraine, belongs to it, and Ukraine considers itself to be an independent country. I'm sure most of us agree on what side is right, but my point is more than that. My point is, we have Russia, we have Ukraine, we have United States, we have Canada, we have India, we have UK, we have Germany, we have France, we have Japan, we have Korea, and so on. God made earth. God did not make countries. God did not make India and Pakistan. God did not make Germany, France, and England. God did not make Russia and Ukraine. Why do we fight? Because we forget what is important in this life, and we hold on to this ego, and we hold on to materialistic possessions, which at the end do not matter. And I want to relate this to what we are discussing today. Just as God made one earth, and we fight over who is right and who is wrong, God made one spirit. We are all in one spirit, and we fight because I'm a Jew, I'm a Sikh, I'm a Christian, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Buddhist, and we fight on those, and believing that the same God made all of us, and we are children of the same God. One thing that comes to mind in terms of all these fights and struggles is the following, and that is that we have many mothers sitting in this audience. Imagine a mother with two sons, and each of them fights and brutalizes the other, saying that my mother is better than your mother. That's what we are doing. That's one of the reasons, I would say, one of the most important reasons that faith matters, that we tie ourselves, we link ourselves to what we are. what our origin is, what our essence is, rather than whether I drive BMW or I go on a bike or I have no other means except to walk around from one place to another. That doesn't matter. What matters is where we stand. And that comes in handy. That comes in, I generally like to look at the practical examples of things. That comes in handy in circumstances when we have nothing else left to fall back upon, but we have faith. We can fall back on faith. And I'll give you two examples, two very prominent examples. One of them is an actual incident I personally know, and I've talked to that personally, soul-to-soul discussion with a person who in a riot was being attacked. And when he faced his attackers, the attackers are coming, they're standing just for 10 seconds, face to face. They look at his eyes, he looks at their eyes, he knows that's the end of his journey. He says his own last prayer. He prays for his family, he prays for his neighbors, and then a miracle. Within those 10 seconds, silently, he prays for his attackers. Just comprehend that. He prays for his attackers because in his mind, all of us are one spirit. All of us are children of the same God. He prays for his attackers. That comes from the depth in faith that you cannot achieve otherwise. And one more example I would give. About 2 years ago, 2018, I think around this month, June or July, we had 13 soccer players trapped in a cave in Thailand. They didn't have food. They didn't know whether they would survive or not. They didn't even have water to drink. They drank the water that they were trapped under. Most of them early teens, 10, 12, and so on. And what did they survive on? Prayer and faith for, I think, more than 10 or 13 days when they were eventually rescued, and people wagered their life in trying to rescue them. That's faith. And that's why it is necessary that we all have faith in things like this. One more thing. I would say that faith and our spiritual life and worldly life is interconnected. We cannot live with one without the other, of course. But if we just concentrate on worldly life, if I have 1 million, I want 10. If I have 10, I want a billion. If I have a billion, I want 100 billion. If I have 100 billion, I want to be richer than whoever the current billionaire is. I think Elon Musk is probably the most rich. But if you have faith, once you reach that spiritual level, you would not ask for anything else because you are now really contented. You have contentment that nothing else can bring. What can religious leaders of faith can do? I think all of us in the society have to contribute to whatever problems we face at the global level, whether it's climate or any other problem, but religious leaders have a special role to play. I know that I strongly believe we need educationists, we need politicians, we need legal scholars, we need law enforcement, we need everybody, but religious leaders have a reach that none of us otherwise have. What Pope Francis would say would be heard beyond the borders of not only the Vatican, but almost all countries. It would be not bound by boundaries of nations or anything else. The religious leaders really have a great faith. And as I said earlier, I generally like to give you example. I'm going to give you an example or two. Multi-Faith Alliance for Syrian refugees. I'm on the board, but I must admit that I've not done much. But that Multi-Faith Alliance for Syrian refugees has over the last few years raised by now more than $225 million for aid to Syrian refugees. And you know how they distribute it? By collaboration between Israel Defense Forces and Syrian non-governmental organizations. Look at the reach. Look at what you can do, how many people you can affect by having your religious voice. And there are very different, very difficult things to do otherwise. And a dear Rabbi just mentioned about looking across the border from Ukraine and saying things like, you know, how people are trying to help each other. That's what comes from faith. And that's what comes from what religious leaders can do. Now, as far as all religions having the same basic fundamental things, I'll start from what I just saw today. So we had a Ustad Clubwala give a talk. I'm very impressed for two reasons. One, it really spoke very well about what we all need to do. But at a more personal level, that impressed me. He's a Zoroastrian, I'm a Sikh. Word by word, each and every sentence, the whole thing, I can plagiarize and give a talk at a Sikh gathering. That's commonality. I don't have to even think, I won't do that, don't worry about that. And if I try to do it, I would not be as effective and eloquent as you are. But that's what is common. And I forgot to put my lapel pin, which says Ik Onkar, that we are all one at the basic level. When I was doing PhD, I did my PhD in Mumbai. At that time, we were 10 graduate students in that department from 10 different states, from 10 different mother tongues, from 6 different religions, including and what we used to call, and we call here today, including a Parsi. 6 different religions among 10 of us. I can assure you one thing, absolutely sincerely, without trying to make up anything, I did not know for several months, except for a couple of people who I could directly see whose religion was what, because it doesn't matter. If it mattered, we would probably, none of us would have survived here by now. That's how we work, but that's not how we need to work. And then I want to bring in two principles. Any theory of creation you take, if you look at the practical level, there are 2 principles of creation, whether it's in your view, God created the earth and everything else, or the Big Bang did. Those 2 principles are diversity and interconnectedness. Whether you look at the living world or the plant world or the animal world, at the viruses, look at the diversity of viruses. You have coronavirus 2 that does something entirely different from smallpox. That's something totally different from so many. So diversity is built in the creation, and oneness is built in the creation, and interconnectedness is built in the creation. Near the end of my talk, I want to bring up a story. I was in University of Amherst, Massachusetts, neuroscience campus at Worcester, needed to drive in heavy snow to catch a flight. The driver would not stop speaking or talking to me, even though I really wanted him to be quiet. I had not slept for 3 nights, and I wanted to go and be ready for the next speech I was going to give. He would not stop. The topic came to some of the things. I think the Charleston AME church shooting had taken place recently. Topic came to that, and I lamented the fact so many people had lost their life to hatred, which was not needed to be there. This guy who would not stop talking, he went silent, stone silent for 10 seconds. And he knew my name was Dr. Singh. He said, Dr. Singh, after that, he said, Dr. Singh, are you a surgeon? I said, no. He said, do you know a surgeon? I said, yes. He said, ask your surgeon friend a question on my behalf. If that supremacist who went and shot the people was on that surgeon's table and he needed blood transfusion, and the only blood that was available was from Pastor Pinkney, I think Pinkney was his name, he said, would he sacrifice his life on the altar of his whiteness and not accept the blood? And that is the scene I have always thought about and I want to think about. We know about cases like Daniel Pearl, the Washington Post journalist who was beheaded. Then we knew many other people around that area, they were beheaded. And my question is, I have a question from those people to ask, and I have a question from all of us to ask. If you take the blood of Daniel Pearl, put all your scientific tools, can you tell me the religion of that blood? Tell me the religion of blood, whether you sacrifice a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Sikh. And you know what? I'm not just talking simple talk. I'm not just making some idealistic speech here. Again, whether you believe in God and acts of God or nature and natural phenomena, tell me which of the following things distinguishes one religion from the other. Does a tsunami come and say, I'm going to destroy only the Buddhist homes, I'm only going to destroy the Hindu homes, but not touch any Sikh or Jew home? Does a hurricane come with that? Does a wildfire come with that? Does coronavirus 2 come with that? None of them would come with that. Why do we come with a list of Sikh homes, Jew homes, Christian homes, depending upon our level of and direction of faith, so that we can burn them alive, we can gang rape them, we can torture them? And you can see that happening in Ukraine right now. Not even on the basis of religion. I'm a Russian, you are a Ukrainian, you are a Russian, I'm a Ukrainian. On that basis, is that what we were created for? Is that what God created here for? I want to bring 2 things before I end. One of them is we had 16 nations represented on the stage in the morning. Those 16 countries do not, in my mind, represent 16 countries. They represent one globe. And they represent others, some of whom could not come here because of visa and other restrictions, some of whom could not come for other restrictions. And I want to congratulate all those 16 and those who could not come, who represented not just these places, but the whole world. For my last point, I'm going to go beyond my mandate and asking for your forgiveness in advance. I'm going to bring up something else which I was not asked to do, but it came up in this meeting today, and I cannot not comment on that. I came here today directly flying from having talked at the Stockwa institution, where we had again similar kind of audience, about 14 or 1500 in person and many more online. And the topic was very interestingly, so that I don't mispronounce anything, you have the overall title of Bridging the Global Zarathushti Existence. And the topic of that seminar was our global conscience. And I made a call there. And with due apologies, I'm going to make a call here. And my call is to the youth in particular, with one caveat. My definition of youth is based on its actual specific reason. My definition of youth is from 5 years old to 95 years old. I talked there about an issue that came here prominently. That issue is the equality between men and women. I have, as mentioned in my introduction, I have talked extensively on that. I have organized panel discussions all over the world, including in Ukraine, and in New Zealand, and many other places. There is one thing that stands out in all these places, and that is the treatment, or I should rather say the mistreatment of women is beyond anybody's comprehension. I will just bring in 2 stats, which I hope shakes some of you who do not know about these things. When I go and talk to other places, and I talk about the status of women in other places, I'm always confronted with one question. They say, you talk about treatment of women all over the world. Tell us, how can you even talk about it if you look at the example in the United States of America? Now, we sit in a place where we talk about others, preach them, but we do not practice that ourselves. There are, on the average, in the United States of America, including in New York City and Erie County, where I come from, in America, on the average, there are 4 women who are killed every day on the average. 4 women killed every day on the average in domestic violence. And just imagine how many of them are suffering. And if you want, I can give you that number. There are a few tens of millions every year. And I'm going to bring another stat here. Those women who are abused, there are actual solid medical imaging studies. And I'm not just talking about having talked to a journalist, actual physical medical imaging studies. 80 to 85% of them suffer from traumatic brain injuries. Compared to that, I'm not saying we should not worry about others. Compared to that, we talk about athletes. In America, about 1,000 or so, and veterans, about 18,000 or so. These are solid numbers. 18,000 veterans versus about 1.6 million women who have gone through multiple episodes of traumatic brain injury. And if you say somebody who has gone through traumatic brain injury, if not multiple, that is about 20 million. Try to comprehend this number, and here is my call. Both to the youth and everybody else who is listening to this. Let us make a vow to ourselves that we talk all the time. The talk is cheap, but to act is different. Another phrase that really pulled me in, which was cited by Justice Nariman, the phrase was good thought, good word, good deed. And that's what actually comes in Guru Granth Sahib, which I talk about very often. And we have a very similar, exactly the same phrase, man bach kram. Good thought, good word, good deed. Let's not just have good thought. Let's just not have good word. Let's have good deed. And let's make sure that in not too far from time from now, we don't have to think about whether women are equal to men or not. Now, we talk a lot about it, and I have talked a lot about it. People tell me, actually yesterday somebody I brought this up, and yesterday somebody asked me a question. He said, Satpal, how can you talk about this? America, you said it took us 144 years to have women voting rights. Look at Canada. We got voting rights for women in 1920. They got it in 1946. And you know what else they told me? I knew this, but I don't have the courage to admit that. Until 1929, a woman in Canada was not considered a person. And I'm not kidding. There's an actual case, an actual court case where for some very odd circumstances, a woman was named a magistrate. She goes to the court. She wants to start the course. He says, okay, the court is in session. Nobody responds. Why? And eventually somebody tells her, Madam, I have the unpleasant duty to tell you the court is not in session. She said, why? He said, by law, the court in session, if it is presided by a person, and by law, you are not a person. Keep that in mind. Comprehend the numbers I have given you. Forgive me for intruding on your time beyond what I should be talking about, and just think about it and let us do something about it. And seeking your forgiveness for what I have said here, thank you very much, and God bless you. God bless 16 nations, but far beyond those 16 nations, and God's blessings be always with you now and forever. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Just God, as God made one earth, he made one spirit. Very profound, Dr. Singh. And also, can you tell a person's religion by his blood? Very profound, profound statements. So thank you so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. That concludes our session today. And I have to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to come over and grace this occasion on the opening day of this Congress. Now I will call upon Mr. Clubwala to make the final presentations.
I think all of us agrees this was an amazing session. To have people of this prominence and to be enlightened by all of them, and recognizing, as so many have said, we are all one. It is now my distinct pleasure to give a little token of our appreciation to the panelists, and to let you know the coincidence of this. It's a book. The title is Zoroastrianism and All Faiths, and the author is none other than our keynote speaker, Rohinton Nariman.
Thank you very much.